The void boiled. Space itself fractured under the weight of the Dominion's warfleet, an armada of 1,000 ships, bristling with annihilation. Their formation was surgical, a vast iron claw poised to tear apart whatever dared stand against it. Shields crackled. Cannons pulsed. Engines howled in the black. And then, from the abyss, we arrived. One ship, a solitary spear of defiance, sliding through the stars like a blade unsheathed. The Solace, an outdated diplomatic vessel, stripped of its original purpose, reinforced with the kind of desperation only humanity could forge. It moved with a quiet confidence, a predator in the guise of prey. On the bridge, Commander Regis stood rigid, his eyes fixed on the holo-display. 100 targeting solutions painted his ship in red, each one a whisper of imminent destruction. He exhaled, slow and measured. They're waiting for us to flinch. The comms officer, Vexa, ran a hand over her console. They're hailing us. Multiple channels. Standard warnings first, then ultimatums. They expect surrender. Expectations make for easy graves, Radius muttered. Beyond the reinforced viewport, the Dominion flagship loomed Vorik Prime, a dreadnought so massive it drowned starlight in its silhouette. Its hull bore the scars of 1,000 conquests, its weapons primed to add one more. This was no negotiation. This was a demonstration. A low chime. A voice, cold and precise, cut through the silence. Unidentified vessel, this is Overlord Xarath of the Vorak Dominion. You will deactivate all propulsion and prepare for immediate assimilation. Any deviation will result in total obliteration. Vexa glanced at Regis. He didn't move. The weight of their mission pressed against his spine, a duty heavier than any weapon. Humanity's first and final message carried on a single ship into the maw of extinction. "Patch me through," he said. Vexa hesitated, then engaged the link. Regis leaned forward, his voice steady, unshaken. "Overlord Gareth, you brought an armada for war. We brought a single ship. If you think that means we came unarmed, fire the first shot and see what we really sent." A silence thick enough to choke. Then Vorik Prime's engines shifted, subtle but unmistakable. A recalibration. A pause that spoke of hesitation. A heartbeat later, the Dominion fleet adjusted course. Not retreating. Not advancing. Just waiting. Because now they weren't sure. And doubt in war was deadlier than any fleet. The silence stretched, a blade drawn too tight, ready to snap. Regis felt it in his bones, in the weight of his own breath. He kept his face still, unreadable, but beneath the surface, the calculation burned. The Dominion had hesitated. That hesitation could be shaped into a weapon. Vexa's fingers hovered over the comms panel, muscles locked in tension. Her mind screamed at her to break the quiet, to do something, anything, but she didn't. She'd seen men die by rushing into the unknown. She wasn't about to make that mistake. Across the bridge, the Solace hummed with restrained energy. A ship built for diplomacy, reforged for survival. It carried no mass drivers, no plasma lances, no torpedo bays. But weapons were more than just metal and charge. A single, well-placed doubt could cripple an empire more effectively than a fleet. "Response?" she murmured, eyes flicking to Regis. "They're thinking," he said. His voice was low, steady. "Let them." Inside Vorik Prime, Overlord Xarath's War Council watched, waiting for his command. Officers draped in ceremonial armor, their breathing shallow, their thoughts chaotic. They had expected a surrender, a plea for mercy, a desperate attempt to flee. Instead, they received a threat wrapped in steel certainty. A single ship that did not flinch. That alone was dangerous. Xarath's eyes narrowed. He had conquered a dozen systems, slaughtered billions, rewritten the fates of entire species with a flick of his wrist. But this was something else. A trap? A weapon concealed within that fragile hull? The humans had always been reckless, but they were never suicidal. He turned to his second-in-command. "Scan them again. Deep. I want every molecule of that ship analyzed. Back on the Solace, Regis watched the Dominion fleet with the cold patience of a man who had already accepted death. He wasn't here to fight. He was here to win, and war was never just about firepower. It was about control. He knew what Xarath was doing. Trying to unearth a deception, trying to find the hidden blade. But there was no trick, no grand illusion. Just a truth too dangerous to ignore. "Commander," Vexa whispered, voice tight. "They're scanning us again. Let them. We can't bluff forever." He looked at her then, just a flicker of a glance, but it was enough. Vexa had been with him long enough to understand what he wasn't saying. She exhaled sharply. "What if they call it?" "They won't," he said. "Not yet." A new voice cut through the tension. Lieutenant Kyle, standing at the auxiliary station, his cybernetic eye pulsing with data streams. His expression was grim. "Commander, they're not just scanning us. They're broadcasting." The weight of those words settled on the bridge like a slow-moving storm. Vexa's hands clenched. "To who?" Kyle's eye flickered, parsing through layers of intercepted signals. Then, his breath caught. "Everyone!" It hit like a cold knife to the gut. The Dominion fleet wasn't just analyzing them. They were transmitting everything: the Solace's presence, Regis's words, every micro-detail of this moment to every Dominion-held system. Xarath wasn't stalling. He was turning this into a spectacle. A warning. Or worse. A test. Kale's cybernetic eye pulsed with frantic data streams, his jaw locking tight. It's not just a broadcast. There's a return signal. Vexa's hands moved before she could think, slicing through the encrypted layers, tracing the pulse back to its source. Her breath hitched. "It's coming from us." Regis turned to her, eyes sharp. "Explain." She swallowed. "Something on this ship is transmitting." Kale's fingers danced over his console, isolating the anomaly. "It's a low-band burst. Almost invisible." But the Dominion caught it. His gaze flicked up. "This isn't an accident." Regis processed it in an instant. A traitor. A planted device. Or worse, something buried in their own systems, waiting for this moment. His stomach tightened. Vexa's face paled as she ran another trace. "It's coming from the diplomatic suite. The one we sealed." A cold realization slithered through the crew. The room had been locked down before launch, its systems scrubbed clean. No one had accessed it. No one should have been able to. Kyle stood, already moving. "I'm cutting the power to that section." "No." Regi's voice was steel. "We go in." Vexa's eyes snapped to him. "Commander, if this is a trap, then it's already sprung." He unholstered his sidearm and strode toward the lift. Kyle followed, pulse rifle primed. Vexa hesitated, then grabbed her sidearm and fell in behind them. The diplomatic corridor was silent. Too silent. The usual hum of the ship's systems felt muffled, like something was pressing down on reality itself. They moved in formation, weapons raised. Regis gestured to the sealed door. Kale keyed the override. The lock hissed. The door slid open. Inside, the chamber was dark, save for the eerie flicker of an active console. A single figure stood at the terminal, unmoving. A man, or what was left of one. His skin was waxen, his veins black with something unnatural. His mouth opened, but no breath came. Only a hollow, static-laced whisper. "They are already here." The ship shuddered. The lights flickered. And outside, the Dominion fleet suddenly altered formation, not toward the Solace, but away. As if something else had just arrived. The ship bucked hard, inertial dampeners barely compensating as something massive disrupted the void. Regis steadied himself, gun locked on the figure at the terminal. Kale's cybernetic eye flickered with frantic scans. "That wasn't them," he muttered. "Something else just dropped in." Vexa's breath was shallow, fingers flying over her wrist pad, trying to shut down the transmission. But it wasn't just a signal, it was a beacon, a call that had now been answered. The figure at the console shuddered. The black veins across his skin pulsed, thick, like roots burrowing deeper. His lips curled into something that wasn't a smile. "You were never negotiating," the voice rasped, distorted. "You were delivering." Kyle fired. A single round punched through the figure's head, but there was no blood, no collapse, just a ripple, like flesh was an afterthought. Then the thing moved. Not toward them, but into the console, dissolving, seeping into the ship's systems. Alarms screamed. Lights flared red. Vexa's eyes went wide. "We've been breached." The Dominion fleet was moving, pulling away, shifting into defensive formations. A tactical retreat, but not from the Solace. From what was now rising behind them. The main display flickered, static distorting the feed before stabilizing. And there it was. A ship. No, not a ship. A presence. A construct so vast it defied scale, its shape wrong, shifting between geometry that shouldn't exist. Its hull was a deep, seething void, absorbing light, drinking the stars. It wasn't here to join the fight. It was here to end it. Kale's voice was tight. "What the hell are we looking at?" The answer came from the ship's comms, except it wasn't Vexa, and it wasn't anything human. "You have brought us home." And then the Solace began to change.